Who really killed YuMenglong? Latest investigation reveals the impossible. The city was still learning how to breathe again when the first impossible clue surfaced. A single, corrupted file labeled only moonlight_final, found on a retired server tucked inside a Seoul archival vault. The file had been partially destroyed, yet enough remained to force an entire continent to reconsider everything it thought it knew. For months, the mainstream explanations had danced in tidy circles: an accidental fall, a tragic overdose, a closed medical case. But the fragmented footage, when pieced together by an anonymous consortium of independent journalists and fans, drew a far darker map. What the clip hinted at didn't just challenge an official story, it demanded the world accept an uncomfortable truth. The death of YuMenglong was not an isolated tragedy. It was a method. This is the story of that method, the buried paper trail, and the impossible revelation investigators unearthed when they followed the trail of blackouts, stolen phones, and disappearing witnesses. The first thread, the memory card in a pillow. It began with a pillow. A junior cleaner at a boutique hotel in Urumqi found an old cotton pillow in a discarded suitcase. Inside its lining, wrapped in waxed paper, lay a memory card. Forensic teams later confirmed the card contained multiple files: video clips, voice memos, and 2 short text files. One text file read, in English and in a shaky hand, "Moon counts days. Tell Qian. Don't trust the cry." When technicians managed to salvage a corrupted video, the fragment that remained was staggering: a shaky close-up of Yu's hand gripping something, an envelope, perhaps, and his voice whispering, "If I disappear, don't call it accident." Then static. Then the clip ended. That single piece of footage spread across underground networks. Within hours, activists and independent reporters were cross-checking flight manifests, CCTV logs, and hospital dispatch records from the 3 days before he died. Patterns, previously dismissed as coincidence, began resolving into a pattern: suppressed records, rerouted ambulances, and missing tapes. The second thread, blackouts and blind spots. The data revealed an astonishing choreography: blackouts arranged by time and location, each engineered to create a short window where surveillance would be absent. In one case, a subway CCTV behind a luxury hotel cut to black for exactly 22 seconds during the time Yu was recorded entering the building. In another, the feed from a street camera near a hospital showed a 1-minute freeze while an ambulance allegedly arrived, and interval auditors later determined corresponded with a manual override. It wasn't randomness. It was choreography. Investigative coders reconstructed overlays of camera fields and blackout intervals across 3 cities. The result looked surgical: a trail of gaps timed to allow movement across public spaces while erasing the path from view. Analysts called it the corridor of erasure. When pressed for comment, official spokespeople claimed the outages were technical glitches or routine maintenance. Independent analysts found those explanations implausible. The blackout intervals repeated with mathematical regularity. At certain coordinates they overlapped, creating corridors of invisibility across an urban tapestry. The third thread, the 3 witnesses. Then there were the witnesses, 3 women who had been in Yu's orbit in his last week: an assistant, a stylist, and a junior PR coordinator. Each of them left a breadcrumb before vanishing. The assistant's last social media post was an innocuous photograph of a rainy street. The metadata, however, contained a hidden file, an audio memo of the same tapping code investigators later found in Yu's vent recording. The stylist's diary pages were found folded inside a costume trunk. 2 pages described a private party where a man with a gold phoenix pin joked about cleaning up loose ends. The PR coordinator's emails, partially recovered from a cloud backup, contained frantic, half-sent drafts. They said, "We can make the story go away. Please save the drive." When the 3 women disappeared, authorities called it temporary relocation or voluntary going off-grid. Friends and family insisted otherwise. Anonymous CCTV captures showed a white van with tinted windows making unusual routes the night the women vanished. The combination of the van's path and the blackout corridors suggested an operation that moved quickly and knew exactly when the public eye would be turned away. The fourth thread, The manager's missing pages use manager, whose office was a maze of contracts and hard drives, had kept notebooks that later turned up partly redacted on a lawyer's desk in Hong Kong. Those missing notebook pages, when pieced together from photocopies and recollections, described repeated high-pressure meetings with nameless investment partners who insisted on controlling artists' exit clauses. One line stood out: "We own the image. We own the end." Investigators pieced together offshore deals, shell companies, and contractual clauses with ambiguous language. In several agreements, termination clauses were linked to continuous reputation jeopardy, a phrase civil lawyers called a red flag, effectively a mechanism to restrict an artist's ability to speak freely. More importantly, the manager's notes hinted at a practice so cold it read like corporate policy. When an artist posed a reputational risk, the contract's enforcement mechanism, often described in euphemism, fast-tracked containment options that included rapid legal mediation, financial penalties, and social erasure. The notes stopped short of naming violence, but coupled with the pattern of blackouts and the silence of witnesses, the silence itself began to scream. The fifth thread, the corrupted hospital logs, an even darker layer surfaced when anonymous IT specialists in 3 countries pried open hospital archival logs. At the hospital where Yu's medical episode was logged, the timeline had been altered, timestamps changed, attendance notes rewritten, and the ambulance arrival time shifted by 25 minutes. A radiology file, found intact on a backup server in Osaka, contained an image claimed by hospital officials to be post-fall, but metadata disclosed a different capture time. When the radiologist responsible for the original image was interviewed under anonymity, he described pressure to close the incident and felt his department was being micromanaged by an external team that wanted consistency across statements. He declined to name them. That level of manipulation at medical institutions suggested an influence with reach into critical infrastructure, capable of altering the official record at the very moment evidence should have been immutable. The impossible revelation, the culmination of these threads, led the consortium of independent investigators to a hypothesis so unlikely it seemed impossible: a coordinated network, operating through corporate intermediaries and sympathetic nodes inside municipal systems, had developed a systematic method to neutralize high-risk public figures, not openly, but by exploiting procedures, contracts, and the public's trust in institutions. They named it, in the language of leaked notes, Directive Moonlight, a suite of clandestine mechanisms that included contractual clauses to financially and legally muzzle artists, corporate media pressure to orchestrate branding narratives, tactical blackouts of surveillance to enable untraceable movements, access to hospital administration channels to alter official medical timelines, coercion or bribery of key personnel to secure silence. This doctrine did not require a single violent mastermind. It required a coordinated infrastructure and a culture of compliance, people who would look the other way, files that would quietly vanish, and institutions whose record-keeping could be bent. If true, song, actor, manager, and critics all argued, then YuMenglong's death was the end product of a system that treated artists as assets and outcomes rather than human beings. The memory card's final clip, a name and a face, it was the final salvage from the memory card that pushed the case from conspiracy theory to urgent inquiry. In the recovered seconds, when audio could be enhanced beyond the static and the ruined frames, a face appeared in silhouette, a man in a dark suit with a gold phoenix pin at his lapel. He spoke, in a tone later described by listeners as half-joking, half-ordering. "Make sure the story lines up. No oddities. We don't do headlines." The clip was only 4 seconds long. There was no clear contextual lead-in or follow-up, but the image was enough to ignite outrage. The gold phoenix pin had been noticed before, seen in a photo from a years-old private industry celebration. The man in the picture was named in gossip columns. His identity in reputable media was murky, but linked to an influential investment firm that had acquired stakes in multiple talent agencies. The consortium published the name with caveats. This was circumstantial, they cautioned. Correlation was not causation, but the name matched a confluence of other evidence: company documents, offshore transaction trails, and witnesses' recollections. The silence inside the investigation chamber was so heavy it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Everything had changed in the last 12 hours. Every timeline that fans thought they understood, every witness account that seemed reliable, every official statement that agencies repeated like gospel, all of it began to crumble the moment the new forensic breakdown was released. For the first time since YuMenglong's death on September 11, 2025, investigators admitted something they had avoided for months. YuMenglong did not die the way authorities originally claimed. And once that door opened, everything fell apart. The continuation begins exactly where the first article ended, with the leaked report showing that Yu's final hour had multiple individuals around him, yet not a single camera captured their faces clearly. Now, we return to that moment. The expert panel had spent the entire night watching the enhanced footage frame by frame, and when they finished, one of the specialists from the Seoul Forensic Lab pushed back from the table and whispered the line that now echoes across Asia. "This is impossible. The hands on him don't match anyone listed at the scene." That was the first crack. The second came when detectives isolated the audio. What they uncovered sent shockwaves through the room, a faint voice trembling, almost begging, almost whispering, "Go run. Brother, run." The voice wasn't YuMenglong's, nor was it any of the 3 security staff on duty. It belonged to a man whose identity remains unknown but whose breath was shaky, terrified, and desperate, as if he knew something catastrophic was moments away. The timing lined up perfectly with everything the world had questioned: Yu's sudden disappearance from public view, his extreme weight loss in final appearances, his repeated requests for additional security that were quietly denied by his agency. As the investigators replayed the audio, they noticed something else. Right after the whisper, right before the thud, right before YuMenglong's collapsing breath, a shadow moved in the corner of the frame. Tall, sharp-shouldered, wearing a coat no one at the location should have had access to. The coat was later confirmed to be Tianyu Media's executive security uniform. That was the third crack. Now panic began spreading through Beijing film agencies. Publicists were calling each other in the dark, using private VPNs, speaking in codes, because no one wanted to be caught discussing the taboo topic. Did Tianyu cover up what happened? Who was the unidentified man? Why did you beg for extra protection? Why was the CCTV exchanged hours after the incident? Meanwhile, fans around the world refused to look away this time. On Weibo, hashtags demanding a reinvestigation reached 480 million views in under 2 hours. Korean entertainment pages reposted clips with subtitles. Thai and Philippine fanbases launched their own volunteer translation teams to make every detail global. People no longer cared about agencies warning them to stop spreading misinformation. They wanted the truth, and they would tear through anyone who got in the way. Inside the investigative office, another revelation shattered the room. A digital analyst managed to restore corrupted audio from YuMenglong's private phone recordings, the ones recovered from his pillow, hidden beneath the lining, stitched in a way only someone terrified would think to hide their voice. In one recording, Yu sounded exhausted, fragile, emotionally shattered. "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Please, please don't let them bury this." His voice cracked halfway through the sentence, as if he was fighting back panic. And the part the public hadn't heard yet, the part too sensitive for the first article, comes next. "They told me I owe the industry. They said I should stop talking about the video, or someone else will pay." The room fell silent. The video he spoke about could only be the same one that triggered his downfall, the same leaked clip that fans still cannot find an original source for, the same file with timestamps that don't match any known devices, the same evidence authorities used to justify pulling him from scheduled projects. The same video that several experts already claimed showed signs of manipulation. But then the most mind-numbing discovery emerged. A final forensic signature on the file revealed that the video, the one that destroyed YuMenglong's reputation, career, and ultimately his safety, was edited using software that only government-affiliated media divisions had access to. The investigators froze. Every conspiracy that fans whispered for months suddenly became plausible. Every rumor about pressure, threats, and industry debts became more realistic. Every suspicion about why YuMenglong looked terrified during his last week started aligning with actual digital proof. The question was no longer,